How's it going, everybody, and welcome to episode 227 of Master My Garden podcast. Now, this week's episode, we're talking about uncommon and unusual quirky plants. So delighted to be joined by Vick from Individual Plant Nurseries. And Individual Plant Nursery is a relatively new nursery based in County Waterford. Vick has a history as being a gardener in the beautiful Lismore Castle estate, and I suppose her speciality is these uncommon and quirky plants. On her website, some of the sort of categories of the plants are the grassy stuff, the woody stuff, foliage plants, scented plants, pot displays, pollinator friendly plants, utility plants, and succulents. So you're kind of grouping them together. And yeah, all of these are going to be kind of uncommon and quirky type plants, but all with an interesting story entailed to them. So Vic, you're very, very welcome to Master My Garden podcast.
How are you doing?
Good, good, great to have you. So relatively new nursery, and you have, like, as I said, a kind of a history in gardening, and spent some time in the beautiful Lismore Castle. So that's probably the kind of the catalyst for this move into, in the last couple of years, into a nursery producing kind of quirky plants. So maybe tell us a little bit about that kind of story
Yeah.
first.
So yeah, working at Lismore was a really informative kind of almost a decade. Um and yeah, it was the place where I kind of learned my love and kind of got my teeth into the whole kind of collecting and looking for unusual stuff. So yeah, working with Darren Tops, the previous head gardener. So we used to do a lot of traveling to the UK. It was a good time of, work trips
Yeah.
off to the UK and different nurseries, small independent nurseries around the UK and Ireland as well. And we just used to kind of go off and just walk around. Darren would have a kind of loose list of what we were looking for, and then it would basically just be, going around and looking at something and going, oh, that's awesome. Let's
Yeah.
get a few of them.
Yeah.
They can go in the lower garden. And it's yeah, and it was great fun. It was great crack spending the Burlington's money on nice plants.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's always nice when you're shopping with someone else's
Yeah, and they had a good plant budget at the time as well, so there was lots of playing.
yeah, that's good. That's good.
Playing.
And so I know it's different in every scenario, but in that scenario, like some estates like Lismore, they may be restoring gardens to previous templates as such,
Yeah,
and they're pretty much not exclusively, but they're pretty much on a set plants list. But it sounds like you guys had a kind of a free reign a bit as well, so that sounds
yeah. I
good.
mean, Darren had ultimately Darren was the kind of obviously being the head gardener, he was
Yeah.
the guy behind the overhaul and the planting designs and all the rest of it. But he was very much a guy who kind of let the team have an input. That was important to him. So um, if you came across a plant, he really kind of fostered an enthusiasm in plants within the team. So, and left it open for the team. Would be like, if there's any plants, just any plants. So I was always going in with lists of stuff that I'd seen,
Yeah.
online researching stuff, and I was like, oh, they'd be awesome in there, whatever. And then he'd go like, yeah, or are you mental? And then some of it would, he'd work into whatever. But yeah, it was a really good learning experience, and it was a really good work environment working, because there was a lot of discussions about plants, and we
Mhm.
talk about stuff. And on the trips to the UK or around Ireland, when we did plant procurement trips, we generally build in a load of garden visits as well. So it would be this short, intense, like 2 or 3 days,
Yeah.
um, loads of driving, normally with Darren shouting at me about the map. And not shame, but
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
and yeah, so we'd visit loads of gardens, and then we'd do what all gardeners do when they visit gardens, look around it going, oh, that's a bit crap. Or not, or and just say, oh, that's cool. It was really good. It was a really um informative and interactive and dynamic and exciting kind of work environment that, and it was, yeah, it was good while it lasted,
Yeah. And it sounds like, as you said, it sounds like somewhere where you'd learn a lot because
Yeah,
you were allowed to have an input, and
exactly. Yeah.
the plant or the list got a yay or nay, but there was a discussion around why it got a yay or nay, which
Yeah, yeah,
inevitably leads to learning more about it and so on.
exactly. And
Um,
and Burlingtons were really good at giving Darren, yeah, they're not tied up in the whole it must be historical.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Obviously there's a respect for the bones of the place.
Hmm.
Um so they're not tied down, or at least they weren't. I don't know what they're like now, but they weren't tied down to this, like it must be planted like this.
Yeah.
They're very open. I think they were more interested in just keeping or creating the aesthetic that
Hmm.
they wanted, as opposed to a strict kind of,
Yeah.
pathological, like,
Yeah. Replication of something that was before.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's, yeah.
it was,
And so it's that kind of plant procurement trips, garden visits, and spending time having an input into the gardens there that kind of led you
yeah.
to setting up your own nursery. And
Yeah, and it was handy because I did a lot of the propagation at Lismore. So a lot of plants that we stocked the garden with at the time were actually grown from seed as well. So, or we'd buy on the plant procurement trips, we might just buy one or three plants and
mhm,
then use those as parent plants and prop from that. So I really got um to learn through a lot of trial and error. I did my RHS exams as well, but that only teaches you so far, and every garden environment is different.
mhm.
And I'm even sure that some plants either love you or hate you. So, sometimes you have to kind of negotiate with them over the years to kind of figure them out. And then other people will just say, oh, I just bung it in a thing of compost and it's fine.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then, for you, you have to go, oh, it needs 20% sand and it needs 10% perlite, and then it might give you some root. But it's kind of I love that whole, out of all the jobs in the garden, it was propagation that I really love. And I love the whole seed collection and growing from seed. And so I grow a lot of my own stock from seed as well. So
Yeah.
um as
So
well as
saw
parent plants.
yeah, saw on your website that all your plants are grown from seed or propagated on site through
Yeah,
cuttings and division, I presume,
yeah,
and all grown in peat-free compost.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so it sounds like a very circular economy. Uh,
yeah. It's that's I mean, it does mean a lot to me to obviously be sustainable environmentally, but it's also a sustainable way of doing things, um, for your own energy levels and budget
mhm.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So that's important to me. Like when I kind of do the couple of jobs advising on garden stuff that I kind of offer as well, it's sustainability is more than just environmental sustainability. It has to be, um, a garden or garden jobs have to be sustainable for the person that's going to be doing them as well.
Hmm.
Um, so it's no good, creating a garden or a planting that is going to be really labor intensive, or, it's going to take more time and money off you than you actually have.
Hmm.
And so it's working with people to help them create something or work with what they have to make sure that they can sustain it as well, that it's sustainable on a
Yeah. So
practical
you,
level as
you
well.
yeah, you're saying there in relation to, a homeowner's garden, basically,
Yeah,
that if you
yeah,
get someone to come in and design, and even a landscape company to come in and construct your garden, that when they walk out the gate, that
yeah,
6 months later, you're not having to commit 10 hours, 20
exactly.
hours, 30 hours a week to
Yeah, yeah.
maintain what was
Or
put
you're
there.
paying, a gardener to come in and you haven't necessarily got the budget to pay a gardener to come in,
Mm,
as you should pay the gardeners.
yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah, that's a conversation we've had on the podcast previously as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I'm sure.
yeah, funny enough, that's something that has struck me quite a lot recently in relation to garden designs. And we're going off topic here because I know this is not what we're going to talk
Yeah, yeah,
about overall. But it's an interesting topic because there's so many, really good garden designers, and they're creating these designs and they're putting them on Instagram and all the rest of it.
yeah,
And I do wonder, and I've spent some time working in this side as well. I do wonder, like 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, 18 months down the line, how these fabulous gardens that have their barbecue area, their covered seating area, their pool, and
yeah,
then densely planted with whatever the plants of the day are.
yeah, yeah,
And like I just know from a gardening perspective that the minimum amount of time that somebody could give to that per week to keep it looking the way that it looks
yeah,
is, probably 10, 15, 20 hours a week. And I wonder to myself, like, how are these
yeah,
gardens
yeah.
being maintained? It'd be nice to do a revisit on a lot of those and see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing with the whole kind of show garden thing, especially with Chelsea coming up. It is a kind of it's a showcase for what it's basically like the biscuit tin lid gardens that kids do, isn't it? But on a grand scale. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's that thing. It's a bit of a folly. There's very few people are going to be able to afford to keep that kind of garden going to
Hmm.
the, you know, and I know Lismore is a really labor intensive garden, and it's got a heavy weed burden. And I know there's a move, and it is possible to maintain a garden space, an ornamental garden space, working with nature. It is possible to do. You have to kind of tweak your viewpoint on what you consider a neat garden, but it is possible. Like we at Lismore at the time, we'd hit it really hard. It's got a heavy weed burden. It's got a lot of the perennial weeds going on, and so basically from March through till early June, that was just basically my job. Was just hands and knees, weed, 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 weed. But I tended to weed the really kind of pernicious stuff out, like the bindweed and the stuff that makes a
Hmm.
garden look shoddy.
Yeah,
Um, and then things like plantains and stuff like that, the little kind of wildflowery things, you kind of let those go a bit, and
yeah,
then you can tackle them before they go to seed, later on when you've got time. But there is a way of doing it, but it's, there's more skill, I guess, involved in mundane jobs like weeding than people first think, because it is possible to maintain an ornamental space um single-handedly
hmm, yeah,
and efficiently, but you need a bit of nice about you
mm, yeah,
to
and
know what you're weeding out and kind of target things, and then you can kind of let other nice weeds get away and just help hold
yeah,
the
yeah,
you know
yeah.
but it's
Um, so moving on then to the nursery. So your tagline is specializing in uncommon and quirky plants, and I think this is going to be a bit of an education for me as well because I'm sure I won't know some of these plants. But you mentioned that a lot of you'll say open garden owners, designers come to you for sort of specialist plants and unusual plants. But you
Yeah,
said that, in terms of your in terms of customer journey, one of your favorite customer journeys is speaking to somebody who doesn't necessarily know the plants, but likes the story of a plant and then
yeah,
likes the outcome of that plant, say a year down the line, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line.
yeah.
And so tell us about some of these uncommon plants, and you have it broken up quite well on your website. And as I said earlier, into scented plants, foliage plants, pot displays, succulents, grassy stuff, woody stuff, and so
Yeah,
on. So,
yeah. I kind of basically I just grow what I like.
mhm,
I'm not somebody, and the way that I'm kind of building the nursery is kind of I know it's a bit kind of done to death. It's growing organically. So I'm kind of building my stock by growing it from seed, and then I'll sell some of the excess and keep a few parent plants and then plant them out on the beds and
mhm.
stock beds. And so I tend to just, yeah, trawl. I'm basically just funding a seed buying habit at this stage, but it's I kind of trawl through things and then I'll research the plant and then I'll kind of go, right, that's a lovely thing. I want that. So I'll get that, grow it from seed, then be able to offer it for sale.
Mhm.
And so some of the plants I don't even know. Do you know that I'm still learning about them?
Yeah.
And I love that about growing plants as well. You kind of and hopefully you manage to germinate enough that you've got some to sell, uh, some to keep, and enough to keep that you can plant one out on the stock bed, uh, keep one in the tunnel, and bring one up into the house to
Mhm.
absolutely cover your ass over the
Mhm.
winter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you can kind of learn about that plant then, where it died, what it didn't like, you know. So I like to try and keep at least five of everything
Hmm.
so that I can kind of play with them and learn about them. Um, and yeah, it's I really love, yeah, I really love kind of gnarly, messed up looking things, little
Okay,
some
so
grubby stuff. And a lot of what I grow is probably considered kind of borderline hardy. So kind of no lower than -5, you know. So it's
mhm,
I'm kind of straddling the lines a bit, but
yeah,
and I've lost quite a lot of stuff. But it's yeah, that's what I kind of enjoy growing is just stuff that I love. Basically,
mhm,
I'm really selfish with it.
yeah,
I'm not interested in the in what
yeah.
people actually want.
Yes. So it starts with a plant that's obviously interesting to you, and
Yeah.
it's not your typical, as you said earlier, it's not your typical plant that you're going to see in a garden center, your perennial border or whatever.
Yeah.
But if we were to look at it in the category, so say scented plants, what are your kind
Yeah.
of
So that's I'm kind of not massively driven by flowers. There are
mhm,
some flowers that are just awesome. The Iris pumila, that's a beautiful thing. Actually, the guy at Lismore, who grows the veg, bought some of the seed back of Iris pumila. Most awesome iris flower, little dwarf guy. I've got a load of seeds, so they're growing along. But yeah, generally the scented thing is I love the South African feynbos plants, and a lot of the kind of arid climate plants are really highly scented. They're full of volatile oils, and
mhm,
so the whole plant, the foliage, everything exudes really strong kind of camphory, pepperminty scent. So I love plants that actually. So, and they don't always have to be pleasant either. It's, you know, some plants, some plants you kind of rub against them and you're like, oh.
Yeah,
I
so
was,
you didn't say nicely scented, you just said
no,
scented.
just yeah, just highly scented.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Very good.
yeah, some of the plectranthus can be, you know, they're one of those. It can either be cat piss or something nicer, you know. But
And having a look on the website, so everything looks interesting and not typical. So if we move to the categories then, like foliage is obviously one of the, so you said flowers not massively important to you, but foliage and structure, I guess, are probably the two things then that.
yeah, and foliage is, you know, it's kind of, it's not underrated. I mean, it is used, but like your plants are going to be in foliage more than they're going to be in flowers. So it's kind of important, I think, to create to keep that in mind when you're planting up a bed, especially early in the season, like this time of year when the borders are still growing and all the bulbs are coming to an end, and there's that little lag between like now when the summer and everything, you know, everything's in leaf.
Mhm.
So if you've got a really um you know, to cover that, to cover your ass in between that time, if you've got stuff with really good foliage and lots of different things, so you're creating almost this kind of textural, and texture in foliage is as important, I think, as size and shape. And you know, um if you can create that really nice interesting foliage texture, I find that really pleasing when you see a border. So you got maybe fluffy fennel, and
Mhm.
there's some persicaria with little flushes of things, and then you've got, you know, other
Y-
stuff, you know,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because yesterday I just saw somebody, and I can't just think who it was offhand, had it was a garden designer anyway, and they had a picture of a border
mm,
with no flower in it, but it was layers of foliage plants,
yeah,
and it's really interesting because it was a sunny day, so the video looked brilliant,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the colors were all picked up, but there was the bottom layer. So say if you were looking back against the border and there was a wall at the back of it, if you're looking back towards the border, there was a low growing fern at the front,
yeah,
and so that had two layers of colors in it. The new foliage was a really vibrant green. The
yeah, yeah,
bottom layer, last year's layer of new leaves, was gone dark. So you had two
yeah,
levels of foliage. Then above that there was again another fern, but a slightly taller one. And it was the most brilliant snapshot. As I say, the sun was shining on it perfectly, so it couldn't
yeah,
have
yeah,
looked better. But there was like 10 different shades of leaf color in it. There wasn't a huge amount of variety in terms of different foliage and structure.
yeah.
There wasn't a mad amount of structure in
Just
it,
that tonal
but it
kind
was
of,
just a lovely toned border that
yeah,
would hold its own against any perennial border
yeah,
and would look good 12 months of the year, actually,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
it would change and evolve. And you were saying that you didn't think it was underrated, but it's definitely underused foliage.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's under considered maybe when people are planting up thing. I know, and at Lismore, the long kind of perennial border down the middle, I always used to, so I used to come in really early in the morning and have a walk around and just be looking at stuff. And the long kind of perennial border at the middle of the garden, I was always like, oh, I'd love to just plant this up with, and it's just no flowers.
Yeah.
Or if things did flower, just have them maybe tones of green or really underrated, you know, things. And just have it purely as a textural um border.
Hmm.
Because it'd be, yeah, that was always my dream, but you know, I never got a chance. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I've kind of done that with my own garden, but like I say, my own place is more of a stock bed.
Hmm.
So I do try and, use the usual garden design things of fives and sevens and threes and drifts and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I'm kind of like, where's the space? Bung it in because it needs to grow because I need to prop off it. But yeah, I've kind of done it at my place just because of the nature of the plants I like as well, tend not to be super flowery. So it's I do, yeah, I love that kind of, it's more about tone and texture.
yeah. And
Um,
what are your kind of go-to foliage plants then? So,
oh
you
God. It depends on the day. I mean, they all look a bit pants when they're just on their own, don't they? So it's like you don't really know until you see them all together, but yeah, there are loads of the grasses. I love restios. I'm growing a load of restios. That's a great plant. Um, and for a kind of evergreen structural thing as well. Um, I'm not a massive fan of the big hairy leaf jobbies like brugmansias or anything like that. I'm not
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not a fan of the big fat hairy leaf or even tropical leaves. I like little gnarly needle leaved things, or um I like the kind of aridy looking stuff, silver
Mhm.
fir. So a lot of the plectranthus and alerias and stuff like that. It's yeah, I mean everything's everything kind of works together, but I tend to like stuff that kind of mimics the feynbos in that South African feynbos, the growing the floral kingdom in
Mhm.
South Africa, and it's like a tapestry of lots of little gnarly needle-leaved things. And
Mhm.
it's all very tonal. Then you've got restios in between that just kind of come up in between everything, and these little lovely patterns of kind of wildflowers along the path edges and stuff. And then randomly you've got a weird succulent thing just
Yeah.
sat there,
And
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 it's cool.
restios, because I did think this was going to happen, but I have no idea what a restio is. So let's.
Arrest it. So there is a rhyme about it's one of the grassy things on
Right.
on the website, but it's not a grass. But there's a great rhyme actually. So it's sedges have edges, rushes are round, grasses have knees that bend to the ground, and restios are something totally else. So it's they're in their own category, but it looks they look somewhere between, I guess, um bamboo and equisetum.
And
It's kind of,
and what kind of like hardy, not hardy, what kind of.
they are hardy. They're some of them are hardy, not all of them. They're hardy. The ones that I grow are hardy down to about -8.
Mhm.
But once they're mature, so this is what happens to a lot of people as well. I think they get a borderline hardy plant that online says it's hardy down to -8,
Mhm.
but they're buying it as quite a young plant and then bung it in the garden and then it dies in the winter because I think so. I like to err on the side of caution and advise that people grow it up to, a 2 litre plant or a 4 litre plant, even just get it as big as possible before you put it in the ground.
Mhm.
Um, and it's the positioning as well to make sure it's somewhere, south facing, a little bit sheltered, so that you're giving it more of a chance. Because the Irish, it's the in Ireland, it's going to be the wet cold that
Yeah, yeah.
that sees to borderline hardy stuff.
And for the long period of time that we have
And
that.
yeah, exactly, for the 8 months of the year.
8 months, yeah. It
Yeah,
feels like that actually at the minute.
it
But
does. Yeah, it's relentless.
so that's kind of the foliage scented plants. The grassy stuff we mentioned in that. What other grassy stuff do you like? Do you grow?
Yeah, I've not last year I had a lovely little grass called Bootia, or Bootaloo. I don't know what the pronunciation of it is. Um, it's quite a short grass, mosquito grass they call it, or mustache grass.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's a North American um grass, but really nice, short, little tufty fella, and the flowers are like little eyebrows or mustaches, and it ages really nicely, and yeah, it just looks ace. It's a really nice thing. I lost a load of the plants though, so I'm trying to bulk up my stock of it again.
Yeah.
So and yeah, in my own place I've got a lot of the thing that I've forgotten the name of, the pheasant tail grass, the bog
Yeah.
standard
Yeah. Yeah.
one. That's a great grass though. It's kind of it's a really hard worker. It fills, it hides a multiple of sins, seeds itself around. When it gets old and crap looking, you can just pull the clump out easy. And there's enough seedlings and it keeps it really dynamic because it pops up in some places and then doesn't in others. I've got and some of the steeper tenissima. I just changed its name now, I think. Can't remember the name. Um, that lovely fluffy ponytails thing.
Yeah.
Again, bog standard, but I
Yeah, a
don't see
lot of the
it on the
steepest are
website
good.
because you can get it everywhere, but it's a nice thing.
Yeah, for sure. And Steepa gigantea is
Oh
a
yeah,
class plant, brilliant plant.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
hardy as well. Like that'll grow pretty much anywhere. Grows big now.
yeah,
That's the only thing that you do need to watch it size wise because it will get big.
yeah, yeah,
But it's a
yeah.
great plant.
The steeper gigant, we had that in Lismore the time I was there. It was just, yeah, just held really well as well into autumn. You get that light, you get that, was it Dan Pearson calls them light catchers?
Yeah.
Is one of those. So yeah, and I love that as well. That's part of the kind of foliage textural or the foliage thing as well, is stuff that will use light really well. I think Des has said something about that in his book actually. And it is a kind of forgotten about thing
Mhm.
with uh using plants and keeping in mind how they catch light and how they use light and how they throw shade.
Mhm.
It's that's as a cool thing as well. Occasionally you get a shadow of something on a wall or something, and it's oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
And it's not there all the time. It's something that just catches your eye
Yeah,
at a moment.
yeah,
When we look at the other categories, so succulents are starting to become very popular here, and I know that's
yeah.
another
I
category on your.
I did consider kind of trying to get a collection. I've got quite a collection of weird calancho again, calanchoes or
Mhm.
calanchos. Um, God knows what all the species are. I can't remember. I've just went through a phase of just buying loads of different ones, and um, yeah, there's the mother of millions, a Degree Montiana, I think.
Yeah.
Um, it's a cool thing, and yeah, that was a plant. A lot of what I have actually is from stuff that I got during the plant procurement trips that with Lismore.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of the stock that I have are kind of, generations from that. So it's nice that they've got the kind of backstory. I love that about plants as well, is the stories that they carry
Yeah.
for people. It's like, oh, I got this one, I
In.
nicked this one from the Welsh Botanic Garden, and you know, it's like, um, or you remembered like, that was a fun night camping in a field when I got that one, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
like I love that, walking around and kind of different nurseries as well that you get stuff from. There's really nice, independent, quirky little nurseries thrown in the arse ends of nowhere that you get plants from, and it's kind of, they've got their backstory from the plant as well.
Yeah.
So you're carrying like this lineage of stories through the plants. It's cool. I love that.
Yeah,
But
and probably a lot of your plants have stories of some sort like that,
yeah,
just given the nature of them.
I do love the story thing. Yeah, it's yeah, well, we talk about succulents, yeah. But yeah, I offer a few succulents. Bulbine frutescens is another one that I offer. I'll be listing that soon, actually. It's nearly ready. That's a great plant. It's the poor man's aloe vera, they call it.
All right.
Um, it's like a skinnier aloe vera, nice orange flowers on it, but you snap the things off and there's the juicy stuff inside. Yeah, and I've grown a lot of different agaves this year from seed, which should be ready next year, hopefully. Um,
They're brilliant plants.
oh, I love them.
Take a bit of minding, all right, but well, certainly where I am here in the Midlands, they would take a bit of minding. Uh,
Yeah,
you pr
they're kind of. I mean, again, it's the wet,
mm,
cold that will do them. I've got a few of the more tender ones, all right, which will come into the house this winter. Um, yeah, but it's yeah, the agaves are great. Like, so I'm trying to slowly build a nice selection of kind of succulent um stuff, because it is it's becoming popular, but also there's some really
yeah,
cool.
really cool, and they're very functional as well. Like people
Yeah,
generally are successful with them, and
yeah, they make a great security fence. Plant them on top of a wall, be grand.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the succulents, grassy stuff. There's woody stuff, pollinator friendly. Pollinator friendly stuff is like in general, a lot of people are asking about that. But I
Yeah,
guess given your nursery again, this is not going to be the common stuff that you'd see. So what are you?
is pollinator friendly. I kind of put it up there because there's some plants that are definitely like really obviously pollinator friendly, like the Melanosolinum decipiens with its big open plates, and it's just, full of wasps
Mhm. Yeah,
and flies and all kinds of cool things. And but yeah, if a plant is a species and hasn't been interfered with and overbred and overselected, it's going to be pollinator friendly because, and it's kind of what some of the things that I grow as well wouldn't be considered pollinator friendly in Ireland because they're bird pollinated, like the cleanthus and stuff like that. And a few of the salvias are, quite obviously bird pollinated. So it's difficult for our pollinators to get to them.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but yeah, it's like, yeah, I think just as long as a plant just hasn't been cultivated to death, it's, it's,
there's benefit in it then.
yeah, exactly. I kind of listed it as pollinator friendly because it's, yeah, Bosch, obviously loved.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
any of the single open flowered species kind of stuff is going to be
Yeah,
pollinator
exactly.
friendly.
Going to be beneficial, and
Yeah,
it is a bit of a buzz thing now, and everyone sticks the pollinator friendly label on the plants, and
yeah,
it's as I say,
yeah,
bit of a buzz, a bit of a fad at the
yeah.
moment. But yeah,
A de rigueur.
yeah. We mentioned off air, you were talking about we've spoken about it on the podcast before, that you like to grow your plants slightly tough, don't
Yeah,
mollycoddle them too much, and produce them in that way. And then
yeah,
when they hit the ground in the right conditions, obviously they're going to really thrive.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah. I am
tell us
a
about that. Like how do you deliver your plants? What way are they?
so yeah, a, a lot. Some of what I grow is quite capable of coping in nutrient deficient ha habitats anyway. So
Mhm.
Um, a lot of what I have also is drought tolerant.
Hmm.
Um, and generally they're hardier plants anyway. Hardier as in you don't have to mollycoddle
Yeah.
because they're used to working hard. They a lot of them prefer the relationship with the you know mycorrhizum in whatever substrate they're growing in to get their nutrients anyway. So
Yeah.
it's kind of yeah, I tend not to over mollycoddle. They'll get a few feeds, but I don't, supercharge them, and because I just think it makes for weak plants, they put on a lot of sappy growth. You get a lot of floppy stuff, then they get open and to pests and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So it's yeah, I tend to
Grow them a bit hardier.
I don't completely,
It's
neglect
not
them
it's not utter
either.
neglect, but
No,
it's grown, and it's like it's by design. This is the way you're deliberately growing them to be
yeah,
slightly
yeah,
hardier, to be more resilient when they go out.
exactly. And then when I package them up to sell, I have a no plastic off-site policy. So I keep the pots so they come wrapped in paper, but I don't sell anything until it's filling the pot.
Mhm.
So it's gonna hold itself together, and be ready for potting on or planting out or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of, and again, it's from a practical level as well.
Mhm.
Because my site is quite difficult to work. So everything has to be hauled in and up or down. It's I'm kind of
Slow.
on two little narrow terraces on a slope.
Okay.
And so yeah, just the nature of getting substrate like mulching the beds, for instance, doesn't happen. Because I'm just not doing it. So any of my stock plants have to be able to cope in I'm on very open old riverbed because I'm on a quite sharp sided valley that
Yeah.
used to be riverbed. So if I sold cobbles, I'd be loaded by now. That's basically what my garden's made of. But it's so yeah, the plants that I have can cope on, quite gnarly conditions, so um yeah, that's another reason why I kind of grow the type of things that I grow, because I know that they can cope with that open, quite hard conditions. So it's yeah, and for practical reasons, and it helps that I actually like those kind of plants as well. So
Yeah, so they're going to be suitable generally. You're going to be looking at things that are suitable for, dry banks,
yeah, coastal conditions a lot of
coastal
the
conditions.
time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not that I'm by the coast, but yeah, so things that are, and a lot of things are suitable for growing in pots, kind of, quite shallow soils. You don't have to worry about putting them out in, lush conditions. You could just
yeah,
fill
yeah.
your pot with any old shite and a bit of seaweed food once in a while. Be grand.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier on about some, is it like consultancy work you do in certain gardens as well?
Yeah, I'm just trying to set that up.
Yeah.
It's not been, I've had a few jobs.
So, so
But
is that
yeah,
like
it's
with domestic gardens or with or
with
what?
any garden really. I'm kind of open to anything. So yeah, I've done a few little small little back gardens and advising on what people can do. And yeah, it's just nice. I enjoy kind of talking to people about the space that they have, and in some cases working with what they already have.
Hmm.
But it's I can be that kind of person that can be, do you really need all those roses? You could lose a load of them and put some roses in that are really going to like it, and
Yeah.
but you're going to have to do this first before you do that, you know, and it's kind of it's more of an advisory service than a consultancy, because it's slightly different in that I'm not somebody that's going to draw up a architectural level, you know,
Garden
planting
plan, planting
you know.
plan. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's more kind of informal than that.
Mhm.
I will I've created documents for people with plant lists, and talk about what we discussed and my advice for it, so that they've got a hard copy
Yeah,
to look back on, and then a plant list with um yeah, where I'd advised the plants to go, and kind of rough estimates of numbers that they might need, and ongoing care with it, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm just kind of playing with the idea, really, just because it's another kind of string to my bow, I guess. So I'm just trying to make money.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the nursery itself, maybe tell people where they can find it. I know that you have website, obviously, plants delivered. It's a mail order nursery predominantly,
Yeah,
but you do some plant shows and fairs, and I
yeah.
suppose keep an eye on your Instagram and so on.
Well,
So tell
hopefully
people.
next year, yeah, hopefully next year I'll be at a few of the plant fairs, the kind of more specific plant fairs for the type of plants that I grow.
Mhm.
Um, Website is individualplantsnursery.com. It's just mail order, and I'm in person at Lismore Health Store in Lismore. Great little shop if you're visiting the castle. They do pizzas on a Friday and Saturday.
Nice one.
And yeah, so I'm there every Saturday unless it's peeing down.
Brilliant. So
um,
people can find you there on a Saturday and through your
yeah,
website, and I know you're on Instagram and so on as well. So
yeah, Instagram at
individual plants nursery. Yeah,
Nursery. Yeah, yeah.
brilliant. It's been a really interesting chat. There's lots of interesting plants, and yeah, as your tagline says, specializing in uncommon and quirky plants. So definitely not your common everyday stuff. So things that.
Yeah. So some of the things you can find in a normal garden play, but you know, there'll be things that I like,
Yeah,
but
and
it's
not mainstream typically anyway.
yeah, yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I've kind of I'm out of touch with what is mainstream anymore, so I don't know. It's like I'm at that age now where I'm not relevant.
It's been a really interesting chat. There's lots of great stories and interesting plant choices and names there. For more information, check out Vick's website. And yeah, thank you very, very much for coming on Master
Yeah,
My
it's
Garden podcast.
been good crack.
So that's been this week's episode. A huge thanks to Vic for coming on. Really interesting chat. Lots of interesting stories, and as I say, the way she looks at plants, it's definitely different to the way you typically see them. So not going for the standard run of the mill stuff. Everything has a kind of an interesting look to it, and each plant has an individual story. Whether that's the origin story of where that individual plant has come from, or whether it's a story about how this plant came to end up in the nursery. And yeah, they're always interesting to see, and then that story can be carried forward, as she said. So it was interesting to hear about customer journeys, and the people who have no sort of knowledge of these quirky plants started to buy them, and now a couple of years later are coming back and saying how well they're performing and how different and unusual they look in their garden. And that's kind of the idea of, I suppose, growing uncommon and quirky plants, is that somebody else finds the joy in it and gets it going in their garden, and then is able to tell that story forward. So I suppose that's what it's all about. And really interesting chat. And that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and until the next time, happy gardening.